I'm not going to worry about your level of concern.
Yoy and double yoy.
We talking about
Twitter.
Triple yoy.
Think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize half of them are stupider than that.
Quadruple yoy.
We're not urinating on the fire, man. You guys are funny sometimes. We love Pittsburgh, PA.
Happy Thanksgiving to Steelers Nation. If you're listening to this, then obviously the Cowboys game was a blowout, and you're like, let's see what we're talking about on What Jin's Talking About. A conversation about the Steelers social media conversation. I'm Kyle Kreis. Here with me is Greg Benevin.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving indeed. And I hope when you take a moment at some point today, just realize that Steeler fans, you've gotten everything you've wished for. All right. We want Broderick Jones to start. He's starting. We want Joey Porter to start. He's starting. Mm-hmm. We want Canada gone. He's gone. We want Kendrick Green gone. He's gone. We want Kevin You've gotten everything you wanted. So, enjoy your special day, Steeler Nation. All it took was we had to get Brownsed by the Browns.
Yes, that was bleak.
You were the first one to say Tomlin's worst loss. You said that quickly.
I said how long till someone says this is Tomlin's worst loss. I did not believe this is anywhere near Tomlin's worst loss. I meant who's going to give that hyperbolic take, and there were many that took me up on that in the moments after the game.
It's in the division.
Yeah.
Gave up a fourth quarter game-winning drive to a rookie quarterback, and then it made you had to fire your coach, your offensive coordinator in the aftermath. So
yeah,
I can't think of it getting much worse than that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it can be up there. I mean the only thing I would piggyback on what you said there, because I agreed with all that, was they had multiple chances to win, which I think had as much to do with the coordinator being fired as anything else.
Yeah, and I think last year we were just talking about how the Jets game was maybe Tomlin's worst home loss.
Yeah, it was right, because that was the one where, like, the season, the last chance to be like, okay, we're going to have a season that goes and competes for the playoffs, and then meanwhile, they had one of those anyway.
Well, coming up in the second half, I don't know. There's a lot.
I know.
There's so
much.
Are we even going to talk about our quarterback?
I hope so. We should.
Yeah, we should. I say maybe we can do the whole show and not even talk about our quarterback. But we will. There is some important things coming up in the second half, like Tomlin's the one article, the accessory that was very peculiar at his press conference. We'll get to that in the second half. Why don't we get to some of these takes? Where are the takes? Because even though you got exactly what you wanted, still not happy.
It's never enough.
Let's start it off. Let's start it off. We're still not happy. Let's start it off with at Ben Anderson 58. Ben Anderson. Canada being fired is a positive development, but it's too late to entirely fix this offense. It was obvious in January that he wasn't the right guy. They should have fired him then and installed a new offense for 2023. The play calls will change some. Enough? That's the question. Too little, too late. It's I wish I could be happy, but I'm still mad that he wasn't fired in January.
I think this is the most positive and optimistic that these hot take people can be, and they all use the same paradigm. Blank is a positive development, but, and then into what they're actually thinking. Is it enough? That's the question. It's like, I'm reminded of when you separated these fans into masters of the obvious. This seems to be a textbook definition of that.
Where are those masters of the obvious at? Did I lose them?
That's okay.
Man, I lost my cow sound. I mean, it's like it wasn't obvious in January.
That's the
you
other.
know?
I was about to tell. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't 100% obvious in January. It was. They certainly could have fired him off after the past season, but that was a very real thing. That winning streak at the end of the season, the run game was looking better, and Kenny certainly looked better than this. So I wasn't 100% back and forth on Canada in January. I could see them keeping him. That made sense going into the season. But, when things started bad and then Kenny had like the worst month ever for a quarterback and somehow ended 2-2 in it, I can see why Tomlin did what he did.
We still can't be happy about these tweets. Canada's gone. At David Todd, the firing of Canada doesn't change the fact that Pickett hasn't been accurate, hasn't been able to quickly move through his reads, and hasn't shown good pocket awareness. I don't expect that to miraculously change, but you had to try something. Well, did you have to try? If the problem is Kenny, then why did we fire Canada?
Well, they fired Canada because they have much, much less invested in Canada than they do in Pickett. That's where I worked myself around to this, and what I think makes sense to me. Why Tomlin did this now is that what I've learned doing this podcast is that you have to take Tomlin at his word, that everything he does is to try and win the next week. It's not about what happens 2 weeks from now. It's not about what happens next season. It's about winning this next week. And it's entirely possible, in fact, probably likely, that after this last game, that's where Tomlin got to the point where, okay, the best chance to win next week is to have Kenny hearing different voices, is to get Canada out of there, where it finally met Tomlin's threshold of this is what it takes to win next week. At least that's what I think I figured out.
That is a reasonable expectation.
Okay, coach seems to think fine. All right, let's see. We got so much. Let's quickly move on.
Sure.
To at Jay Bailey NFL, Jarrett Bailey. Matt Canada was obviously a huge problem. Do I think it fixes everything? No, because the quarterback is still really bad. Firing Canada isn't going to all of a sudden turn Pickett into Joe Montana. But this is a very welcome start. Again, the same thing as the last one. It's like, what's the expectation then? Why, what's the expectation now?
The expectation for Kenny or the expectation for the team?
For the team or Kenny, both.
Well, I think for both. I think the expectation is to see some improvement from Kenny. And I don't even know if it's necessarily improvement from last year. It's improvement from this past month, which again, every stat I've seen says it's like the worst month the quarterback has had in forever. The other thing I've noticed in all these tweets is the word "but" figuring very prominently. This is one of the few that takes the "but" into the positive part about the "but." It is a very welcomed start.
So is it, is somewhere down the line, is Tomlin and Matt Canada going to have drinks and he'd be like, Kenny just had that worst month in NFL history, and we had to, and you were the one who had to take the bullet for it.
It's entirely possible. I mean, I'm not sure how much Tomlin goes out for drinks with people, but that's not something that sounds crazy to me within the next decade. I mean, not to continually tell people to go listen and watch the podcasts of people smarter who know football better than me, but a point Christopher Carter has made many times is that Canada's job isn't just devising the playbook and calling the plays, it's also helping the players, particularly Kenny, to develop. And Kenny hasn't developed as well, so in a very real way, that, as much as anything, got Canada fired.
Let's go on to at Blitzberg. The Steelers' biggest mistake in a decade was keeping Matt Canada for another season. This organization could have changed the direction of the offense the right way last summer and said they were blinded by a false winning streak at the end of 2022. These false winning streaks have come to get us again. Wow, I've always said be careful of these false winning streaks.
Only a franchise this great and this storied could be plagued by false winning streaks. I mean, this is a bananas tweet. I mean, I don't know if this is the Steelers' biggest mistake in a decade. It certainly seems to have been a major mistake. I don't know if it's quite that big. But yeah, the idea of being blinded by a false winning streak in the NFL, as tough as the NFL is this one could have benefited from a but. It's a very welcome start, like the last tweet had.
I mean, one could, and maybe I could put Matt Canada's career in this context. Got to the playoffs 2 years ago on Ben's last season.
Yes.
Got to the doorstep of the playoffs. We were week 18 away from making the playoffs on Kenny's rookie season.
One questionable horse collar penalty in a game thousands of miles away. Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Flacco moment away from. It wasn't blindside. It wasn't a false. It wasn't any fakery with Canada.
No, there's no fakery. The idea of a false winning streak is completely asinine. I mean, it is to set expectations to a point where they don't make any sense whatsoever.
And as far as I feel like we've had the biggest mistake in Tomlin's career a couple times this season.
Oh, we've had a couple. It comes up like once every few months on this podcast. Someone posts what is Tomlin's biggest mistake, and we never exactly figure out what it is because you can't.
Yeah. Oh, how does this rank? I don't think, because what would the outcome wouldn't have been different last season. If there was no Canada, the outcome this season was still to be determined.
Exactly. And again, the best tweet anyone had about this was Alan Saunders saying that if this won't tell us that much about Kenny for the rest of the season unless it works. If all of a sudden Kenny becomes much, much better, then a lot more of this was Canada's fault than it seems, or even than I think. But if it kind of only slightly improves or stays more or less the same, then that's not the conclusion to reach.
So, we'll find out in the next month and a half whether or not Kenny has the gabagool or not. This is it. This is the gut check time. This is the grit check. Grit, whatever. Okay.
Until next season. Yes.
Anything? Okay. How about the final word on? Well, not even the final word on Canada. We got lots of Canada to talk about. Let's go to the Mad Genius weighs in at Mark Madden X. Mark Madden. Firing Canada is mostly scapegoating and will change nothing. Pickett will still be a scared QB in charge of a scared offense. Now we find out whose fault it really is. Well, he's saying it doesn't matter. What's that mean? Now we'll find out whose fault. He's saying that it doesn't matter either way.
Right. I guess the only way to read his tweet, or the way he'd prefer to have you read it, is that it's all Pickett's fault exclusively. Which, he is the player, he is the man in the field, he's the man in the arena, the one has to determine this, and so a significant, if not a major portion of this has to be his fault regardless. But that's the only way I can read Madden's tweet. You're right, it's a bit confounding.
Well, will it change nothing? Are we going to see?
I don't think it'll change nothing. I think it'll be changes.
We're still going to see some. I bet we'll see some. We're going to still see some jet sweeps.
We're absolutely going to see some jet sweeps. We're going to see some. We're going to see some dump offs. We're going to see some check downs. We're going to see some outside passes. I'm assuming we're going to see more passes to the middle, but I don't know that for sure. I think the one thing this does guarantee that I feel very confident about is it means you're going to see a lot more of Jaylen Warren.
That is a reasonable expectation.
All right. We got that twice from the coach there. All right. All these people that are still unhappy that Canada's gone. Is anyone happy that Canada's gone? At Inside the NFL, real Ryan Clark 25 was fired up at the thought of a new look Steelers offense. Live on the CW. Let's see, we got the sound here from RC. Do we have it? Always with the technical things. Ryan Clark on the CW's Inside the NFL talking Matt Canada adieu.
We have gone from Canada to America. Matt Canada is no longer the offensive coordinator. We're not just going to throw the ball to the sideline and play wish football. I wish we scored a touchdown. We're going to run the football better with Jaylen Warren. We're going to use the middle of the field now that Freiermuth is healthy. And at the least, we're going to put an offense on the field that looks like an NFL offense, and then T.J. Watt and the boys can go crazy on defense.
A turkey in every pot, a chicken in every stew.
Yeah, everyone gets a unicorn. That all sounds great. I don't have anywhere near the confidence that's absolutely what's going to happen. particularly not on 5 days of putting together the game plan for the Bengals. I don't think we have guarantees that any of those things are going to happen. We're going to see a lot more of Jaylen Warren. I don't know if that necessarily means he's going to run better, but we're going to see a lot more of him. That makes sense to me.
I still think I'm not expecting a ton. I'm not expecting a 300 to 400 yard offensive performance.
Me neither.
I'm expecting still don't turn the ball over. Defense holds and wins, and let's get points when we can, and everything that we've been doing so far this season.
Right. I mean, there will be some differences, I'm sure, but I don't feel as confident as Ryan to be like, yes, they're going to be exactly the same things that the fans have been asking for. But then again, a lot of the things the fans have been asking for did happen in the last few weeks. So I guess I can't necessarily roll that out. But I would be surprised if it goes the way that old number 25 seems to think it will.
Yeah, Pat Frymuth running, naked down the middle of the field,
right,
wide open. And
because they did throw the short one to him down in inside their own 20, I remember. And that went for like 4 or 5 yards, I remember.
Let's all this reaction to Canada fired, but no one is anyone talking about like the why exactly what, like why or why now, or what was it about right now? Let's get to why was Canada fired, and we've got at you're under arrest, Dane. DJ yelling at Tomlin on the sideline, then Najee, talking about Najee comments after the game, sealed it, in my opinion. The word immediately after the game was Tomlin's lost the locker room.
Which I just laugh whenever I see now. Like, I mean, I have to cringe, but I mean, I laugh at the idea that Tomlin has lost the locker room.
What was it? Was it that the players finally were showing cracks in the armor of we're not going to talk out of turn?
Well, but it's been that way for the last month. I mean, isn't that what really happened with Chooks against the Jags that gave Tomlin the excuse to put Jones in there? I mean, Najee's comments were incredible. I mean, I'd never seen a post-game interview like that, but I'm still sticking to my theory that all of this helped contribute, but it's still Tomlin, for the first time, really did see getting rid of Canada as giving them the best chance to win the next game. That's my theory on why it happened now, and frankly, I'm sticking to that.
All right. Well, how about let's go over to, is this a conspiracy theory? At J Beamer 456, Jared Beamer. Can we all thank Kenny Pickett for getting Matt Canada fired? If he didn't miss routine throws and wide open guys, Canada would still be here. If the Steelers win that game, if it's 13-10 Steelers, if Kenny puts a fourth quarter comeback, it's a completely different narrative.
Yes, I agree with
this.
I agree with this. I think you're right. I think this is, if he hits DJ for that open touchdown there in the center of the field, if they score and win 13-10 or 17-13 or something or other, then yeah, I do think Canada is still there, because again, and that's what's great about my theory, is it's flexible enough to include this conspiracy theory, in that then Tomlin could make the reasonable assumption that having Canada as the coach gives us the best chance to win the next game, if they had won this last one. So yeah, I do believe this.
If the narrative would be Kenny with another fourth quarter comeback on the road in Cleveland. Canada's changing it. He's on the sideline. He's turning it around.
They're all growing. Defense puts up best yardage performance ever. Jaylen Warren breaking out. Most yards run anyone against the Browns. Yes, it would have been a very, very different world we woke up to that following Monday.
Instead, we're some kind of some kind of false start on defense penalty away from a game-winning field goal. It's not even it's a game of inches, but it's also a game of of milliseconds, or of moments,
And that's one of the arguments that I think some of the haters for the last month, one of the arguments that seems so much more resonant now that Canada is gone, is that when you play the kind of football the Steelers have been playing, all those little things become so magnified. I mean, it's, when a team can go down and score a bunch of points, then it's okay that, you got the hand waving penalty or whatever it is that happened to Keanu Benton. versus, this when you play these kind of tight games. They're just that tight.
It is a pebble in my shoe.
It's a pebble that turns into bigger.
A stone.
This was a first down away. This was a first down in the first quarter away from a pebble that turned into now a
avalanche,
a mountain, whatever you said it. It's more than just a pebble. What about how about the people that still just want to blame Tomlin? Canada's gone, but let's blame Coach at Steigerwald, John Steigerwald. If it was Matt Canada's fault, then someone needs to ask Mike Tomlin why it took him so long to figure it out. Was he just waiting for a loss? Was this inevitable? Were we just a loss away from this happening no matter what?
I kind of think they did ask Tomlin this on Tuesday, and he more or less said something like, well, this was the right time to do it because of the way things had been building. I mean, we were a loss away after the last month. We obviously weren't a loss away in September. We weren't a loss away in October. And that's after 2 very bad losses, and certainly not just on the offense, against San Francisco and Houston. I mean, we have seen in the last 2 years, and this just hit me now, that Tomlin will take dramatic, out-of-character decisions if he thinks the season's on the line. That's how Kenny became the starter in the first place against the Jets, and I think that's sort of what happened here. So
I don't even understand where that's coming from.
How about anything else to say about? Okay, how about one more here on Tomlin? Let's go to at Colin Dunlap. Colin Dunlap. Firing Matt Canada is just getting rid of the first problem. The second one, you cannot let Mike Tomlin have full authority to select the next offensive coordinator, or he'll just pick a yes man who won't fully challenge him. Is this the biggest problem right now? 6-4 in November is to worry about who the next coordinator is going to be?
Yeah, and I also don't think it's entirely a yes man who won't challenge him, because as we understand it, that's what Tomlin might look for in the defensive coordinator, but the offensive coordinator not necessarily. I mean, everything we read is that Tomlin is maybe a bit more hands-off with the offense than he might be with the defense. So I don't think that's what he wants. And again, the Flores pick always goes against this kind of thing. But yeah, I'd be very surprised if he just picks a yes man or someone in-house or something like that. I do think they'll do like a search and bring in someone new. But what's going to happen is they are going to bring in someone most likely that has some connection to Tomlin, and we'll hear all this kind of nonsense up until the moment they're successful.
You're exactly right.
Well, I can't even think. It's not coordinator season for another 2 months, 3 months. I mean, we still got to, I'm talking playoffs, you know?
Right, exactly. And the good news is, it just hit me now, coordinator season will helpfully eat up some mock draft season here on this show.
Maybe not. Why don't we take a break and head into the second half? Coming up in the second half, will we talk anything other than Canada? Maybe some Kenny. Gosh, I've got so much stuff here. Defense? Are we going to talk defense ever? I don't know.
I mean, it's still hard for me to blame them for Sunday.
No, well, maybe we'll talk defense. Maybe we'll find some problems with the defense giving up to a rookie. We've lost to 2 rookies this
season.
Dick LeBeau would be rolling in his grave.
Except thankfully he's still alive.
All right, we'll be back in the second half. Stay tuned.
Remember the heartbreaks. Remember the tears. Getting it all together takes so many years. Remember the close ones, and there were a few. You never gave up trying, wanting to come through. Well, this is your moment. You've learned
It's the second half on your Thanksgiving Day edition. If you're listening to this, then I guess really the family conversation is lackluster. You're like,
man, it's
sorry,
tough.
Mom, I've got the Steelers pod on.
Or hopefully you're listening to this around the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah, you've got your Alexa speaker. Alexa, play what Yin's talking about.
Before the desserts come out.
Yeah, maybe you're doing dishes. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the situation where you're listening to this today.
Yeah, I'm struggling with it. Like, you have the Lions game on in the background with no sound. I don't know.
Lions game, the Cowboys game better still be on. You better be, early adopters. None of these guys wait until Friday to listen. Okay, we promised we would not talk about Canada, but we've just got some more Canada. How about maybe we'll just dump this whole about who the next coordinator will be. Maybe just dump the whole.
Because it's so early. It's so early. We haven't even seen who the interim coordinators, how they're going to be yet before we pick the next guy. Yes.
Let's just see. These are some names that have come across the Twitter sphere. Kyle Shanahan, David Girardi, Ronald Curry, Texas QB coach Gerard Johnson, Byron Leftwich, Ben Roethlisberger.
I mean, it's scary how many of these guys I saw play in one time or another. That's kind of depressing. But the idea of Ben being the offensive coordinator is hilarious. That is, you, the person listening to this, have just as good a chance of becoming OC as Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
You don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's just annoying.
Yeah, it's just let's talk just a couple more Canada things.
Sure.
Is this even? Whoops. Let's get it all the way forward here. Here we go. How about this? At Steelers win 109, Minka Bird Steelers. Tell me this guy doesn't look like he can coordinate an offense. We've got the picture of Eddie Faulkner, our new coordinator, although he won't be calling the plays.
Right, he's the offensive coordinator, but Sullivan's going to call the plays. I mean, it's a stern look and a sweet hat. I don't know what else you can take from that. This is a nice picture of this man. He certainly he commands your attention. He looks like he commands respect. That's all I'm qualified to say about this, and I feel the same about the people commenting online.
No, he's not standing out with the big brim hat like Canada. He's going to blend in, all business, all work.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I remember Coward wear those hats sometimes, and like, if you're a Steeler fan of a certain age, you remember them being buried very deeply in the Steelers merchandise catalog.
Oh, really? I like that hat.
It's not a bad hat, but I'm saying, like, when you go to the hat section, it's not like at the front.
One more thing on Canada. At Renegade Adam Steele. No way, LMAO. We've got a story from when Sullivan was the Bucks play caller back in 2013. And the quote is, the biggest issue early on in 2013 was that the passing plays Sullivan dialed up were fairly ridiculous, consisting primarily of multiple vertical routes outside the hashes, using little in the way of crossing routes, little in the way of routes in the middle of the field, little hot routes, safety valves, or checkdowns. This was hardly helped by Sullivan's prosperity to run the ball up the middle on early downs, leading to both quarterbacks facing far too many third and longs. Kaiser Sosa'd us. It wasn't Matt Canada. It's Sully.
It's which is another one that might be shown the door at the end of the season if Kenny doesn't develop here. But yeah, no, this is it's bizarre because it's word for word exactly things that people have complained about with the Steelers before. I mean, I'll tell you, when you read this, it does kind of come along. Now at least for me, I start to understand more of those meetings where they were like, hey, the playbook, it's a communal thing. Everyone makes suggestions that are included. And it sounds like Sullivan's voice was certainly heard at different times during those meetings.
Yeah, right. We found the Mad Canada playbook and it was written in Sully's handwriting. What the?
It is very much like To Surf Man. It's a cookbook. Yeah. Like, we're on that same trip here.
Okay. How about the people let's talk just a little bit about the game, maybe, instead of just only Canada. Maybe.
Imagine that.
With some killer tweets from @Ray Fittipaldo. Terrible loss for the Steelers. 100% on Mike Tomlin. We had an offense that couldn't get a first down in the fourth. Mm-hmm. We had a drive where we kind of abandoned the run in the fourth.
Yeah.
Then we also had a defense that couldn't run. And Tomlin credited the Browns for that, but we still couldn't get a pass rush to the Browns there. I don't know. It feels like. It doesn't feel like we're outplayed, but it might feel like we're outcoached.
Yeah, I mean it's and in the end, obviously, it's always going to fall on Tomlin, as he said so eloquently on Tuesday. Leadership is lonely, but yeah, it's very well what could have happened. I mean, I think this one very much might be on him as much as any of them are.
You've convinced me that it might be Tomlin's worst loss.
I said that hyperbolically. I mean, the Jacksonville playoff loss is always going to be up there, even though Le'Veon showed up late and AB and Stephon Tuitt was hurt and we didn't know how bad. And there's always going to be some tough ones, and the 2020 loss to the Browns isn't great, but on the playoffs. But for regular season, I think you might have to put it up there a bit.
That's a joke to me.
Well, okay, sorry. Didn't mean to. How about Alex Kozora? Mike Tomlin says the Cleveland Browns had a lot to do with Kenny Pickett's poor play. Man, that's just excuses. At some point, you got to point the finger at the guy. He's supposed to be your franchise quarterback. Raise the bar. I mean, this was some similar complaints with Canada. It was like, why doesn't Tomlin just call out Canada and say we suck? Right. And then now it's the same thing with Kenny. It's like Tomlin says he's tries to insulate his team and players.
He does, particularly in the press conferences. That's not to say that he doesn't send direct messages. I mean, I don't know if we talked about it on here, but I was very struck by not this past press conference, but the one before that, where he said something like, man, we all got to get better. We want to see fourth quarter Kenny in the rest of the game. And like Ramon Foster and others saw this as like a big shot at Kenny. And I just thought, oh, it was a comment, but maybe, I don't know the way it was intended. But yeah, I think this also kind of gets negated by getting rid of Canada, because he's talking about the Cleveland Brown, the press conference that Tomlin did immediately after the game, which almost feels like it was nullified by firing Canada, because that was all those comments about, Cleveland had a lot of fans and they played very well, and it. So, but yeah, we also don't know what's said behind closed doors. I find it very hard to believe that Tomlin has told Kenny that this level of play is acceptable.
I'm sure. When they're going over the film, it's a lot more blunt.
Pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What good does it do to do that publicly? Just to give
right. Oh yeah, exactly.
Just to give the fans their pound of flesh, like the media wants their. Okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How about? Well, meanwhile, in all of this. At Mark Cabali, the Athletic Anonymous player poll. Guess who ran away with the topic? What coach would you want to play for? Mike Tomlin. It goes back to the guys who play the game and certainly have a different opinion than the fans. It's a deeper level of respect.
100% on that. I could not agree more. And secondly, do not click on that tweet, because that is one of those first ballot Hall of Fame racist response tweets. That one's as bad as any of them. So yeah, I made the mistake of clicking on that. Do not do so. Tomlin is, and understandably so, for myriad reasons that we cover quite a bit on this podcast, and I'm glad we do, for why so many players want to play for him.
We love Steeler Nation.
Love Steeler Nation. Should we move on to?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we got to talk. I guess we got to talk about.
Oh my God! They killed Kenny! You bastards!
We got to talk about the quarterback play. Mm-hmm. Let's see how little or much we'll go through this. At Mark Madden X, Mark Madden. At what point do you bench Pickett seriously? He wasn't the only one with that. David Todd tweeted something similar.
Yeah.
what are we benching for? He's not throwing picks.
Right.
That's usually what gets you benched.
Yes, and I think that's a major reason why they aren't or they haven't considered it. And I also didn't realize how many really good quarterbacks right now were benched at one point or another during their pro careers. But yeah, I think this conversation would have continued on a lot more had Canada not been let go. Then we might have been talking about this even more. But I think with Canada gone, that you're getting Pickett for at least the rest of the season, if not much longer.
Yeah, at least the rest of next season, I would imagine.
Right.
Yeah. How about our former fan of the year at RickFish412? Rick Fish, the magic is over. Kenny Pickett is playing truly awful football. The decision not to feed Jalen Warren is completely unexplainable. No more excuses. No more hiding behind a fortunate record. Is the magic over? Is it? Have we seen enough, Kenny?
I think the magic was over for the way it was. I think removing Canada is a way of trying to inject some magic. But I'm very struck by no more hiding behind a fortunate record. We've talked about on this podcast that none of those stats mattered because they were winning, and now that they're 2-2 in their last 4, all of a sudden these stats seem to matter quite a bit more.
All of a sudden the stats matter when you lose a game. How about, did I already hit it? Let's go to this. At David M. Todd. One of the biggest disappointments is Kenny Pickett's ceiling seems to have come down significantly. Average NFL starter now appears to be the high end. Average NFL starter, is that, would you say that's the, is he no different than Geno Smith?
I don't know. Andy Dalton, yeah.
Andy Dalton, is he starting?
I'm from a different era, not from today. But I think it's hard for me to agree with that right now, just because again, last year did not have a false winning streak. That was not fake. We saw it. We all there. It happened. It wasn't a simulation. So I think this is a way of trying to get back to seeing what else there could be there in the ceiling. That's not to say that this is absolutely impossible, but I'm just not there yet, that the average NFL starter appears to be the high end. Also, an average NFL starter with this team might win a game or two in the playoffs, too.
They know better.
And I don't know. Average NFL starter, I don't know if we're average. Yeah, we're below average, that's for sure.
Right.
How's about... What about... Let's go on. Let's go over to... At... PPP_Benjamin, you're rich. Text from Steelers source. Deontay ran the right routes. Kenny wasn't prepared. He never is. Yeah, do you buy this source?
No, because I clicked on this. The algorithm barfed up this guy, and I clicked on his feed. I'm not sure about the Steelers source who happened to give the perfect quote. The Steelers source should also look into maybe doing some writing on the side, because this is very well done. Because this is the one thing that Tomlin has cited time and time again as to why he still believes in Kenny the most, and it's one that does make a lot of sense to me, is that Kenny really does prepare. No one has ever questioned. This is the first that's ever been questioned. No one has ever said that Kenny doesn't work hard enough. This isn't the early days of Ben, where you couldn't get Ben to watch VHS tapes or whatever they were using at the time for DVDs at a game. This is not that. Kenny, this is the first time that's been suggested that Kenny did not put in the work. Now, there's also multiple ways of interpreting wasn't prepared. If it's, Kenny wasn't prepared for them to do that blitz or for this guy to be in the pocket, that's a different conversation, and maybe that is true. But to say that Kenny didn't do the off-field preparation is against everything that we've heard.
So when Kenny, after the game, was like, we thought they were going to throw man at us and they throw zone, and everyone said, oh, that's poor coaching. Is it really maybe lack of preparation?
I think, again, it's hard for me to say it's one thing or the other. It feels like there's a lot of both. Like, you should be prepared for both of these, even if you prepare more for one than the other. But again, what you just asked is the kind of question we are going to be able to find out fairly soon.
Yeah, we'll find out on Sunday in Cincinnati. How about this? Let's just keep piling on.
Mm-hmm.
This is at Stats Guy Daniel Valente, quarterbacks who have thrown for 13 or less touchdowns through 22 career starts since 2000. Number 1, Kenny Pickett. That's the entire list. Pickett is the first quarterback since Trent Dilfer to have thrown for less than 13 touchdowns in 22 career starts.
Super Bowl champion Trent Dilfer.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, no. But due to very unique circumstances. This is one of those stats, like when I read this, I thought of just all the bad Steeler quarterbacks I've seen in my life. Like I thought of Kent Graham and I thought of Tom Zach, who wasn't always bad. I don't mean to imply that he was. But I've seen, and I thought like, wow, they must have been bad. And then there's this realization that no, I must have been, me looking at it back on it, is worse than it was, since this is the worst.
Yeah. Hey, we've seen, Cordell have MVP seasons. We saw Bubby take us to AFC Championship games. Neil O'Donnell.
Oh, yeah. Neil O'Donnell going to Super Bowls. Yeah.
So, quarterback play, we think that, it's, we didn't have any quarterbacks between Bradshaw and Ben. And actually, no, we had some quarterbacks. And
we just didn't have Hall of Famers.
Yeah. And today, Pickett is more like Mark Malone than Ben or Bradshaw
or Neil O'Donnell. Yeah.
All right.
All
right. How about at BT Steel Curtain, behind the Steel Curtain, who should start for the Steelers in Week 12 versus the Bengals? Kenny Pickett, 31%. Mitch Trubisky, 11%. Mason Rudolph, 58%. More than 400 votes.
800. I got 800.
800 total votes, but Mason
I see. Mason himself took a plurality. Yeah. An outright majority.
We didn't really talk about. We talked a little bit about benching Kenny, but should Mace get should he get a shot in there?
Well, he's always going to be there now because of the Brock Purdy role from the title game, so he's inactive, but he's there. What this says to me is that a surprising number of fans remember very clearly the second half of the Jacksonville game a month ago. I think that's why Mitch is as low as he is. You saw Mitch once, and it looked like all of the fears the coaching staff had for Kenny about the throwing the ball up, and hey, Mitch was going in the middle of the field. Whatever other arguments you may have, Mitch was going to the middle of the field where there were a lot of teal.
So Kenny with the worst quarterback performance since Trent Dilfer, you still trust him more than
it's remember how we look at but you'll notice that was a very narrow stat for the worst performance because it only said the word touchdowns. It didn't say anything about turnovers. It didn't say anything about wins. It simply said touchdowns.
Which I guess is how you win games.
Right. Presumably that's
sometimes
different. That's the rumor.
All right, let's talk a little bit of defense. At WVU fan 129, Jared, can we stop with this defense played their tail off nonsense? They let a terrible 5th-round pick march right down the field to kick the game-winning field goal. Also, where was Watt? I saw Garrett making game-changing plays, didn't see Watt. They did scheme. Then they got the ball out of their hands quickly. They schemed well for the pass rush. But again, this guy, this should have been. We said, I think we said last week, like, if we got this guy sticking around in the 4th thinking he can do it, then that's when we'll pick him off. And then we even though we didn't,
the
held
interception
him,
came in the 3rd quarter, or was it in the 4th? I'm trying to remember when.
It was, it was just not. It was earlier than needed.
Yeah, it was earlier than the last drive. For all the Steelers scheming, they were unable to get Watt being blocked by Dan Moore Jr., which was a big part of how Myles Garrett was able to do so well in this game. I forget who made the tweet about Dan Moore Jr. just handed Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year, which might be true. But no, it's again on a day where yes, should the defense have had one more stop in them? Sure, but on a day where they're holding the Browns to the least amount of yards anyone's held them all year, and a large part of that is Trenton Thompson, Michael Walker, and Chandon Sullivan. It's very hard for me to blame the defense. That was the Browns basically played the only way you can play against Watt and Highsmith, which is just throw the ball as quickly as possible. And Tomlin even said in his press conference about the Browns doing that, you're not going to score a lot of points that way, and they didn't.
Two rookies. We already talked about that. All right, two rookies. Why don't we get this band on the field?
Hey.
No. There we go. Brownies, man. Wanted to be 3-0 in the division.
That would have been nice, yes.
Canada be damned. I would have kept Canada for the win.
And so would Tomlin had that happened.
Couple odds and ends. How about at Chris Muller, PGH, Chris Muller, completely random question. Tuesday is the player's day off. Tomlin had a whistle around his neck at the press conference. I'm now wondering, what is he using the whistle for on a Tuesday? Is he putting the coaches through drills? This is the close-up. It is there around the neck. What is that? Just standard uniform protocol? The coach has to have the whistle around the neck.
I think maybe Tomlin just instinctively grabs it to have it on. I mean, what I also wonder, and I have no way of knowing this, but it seems like, almost daily you get like, oh, the Steelers have signed another guy you never heard of from someone else's practice squad. I mean, do you run those guys through drills? Do you get any kind of look-see at them before you bring them in? I don't know. But how many times do you read like, oh, the Steelers brought in 3 guys today. They didn't sign any of them, but they brought them in. And I wonder if this is something like that. But I could also see it's like, okay, I'm coach, I'm up, I'm going to work. I just put my whistle around my neck and I forget about it, as it's just something you do.
I like your theory that they're working out guys, and so that's what the whistle's for. And I'm sticking to it.
Could be.
How about at A Saunders _PGH, Alan Saunders. Despite losing Sunday, the Steelers' playoff chances went up from 61% to 70%, according to New York Times playoff simulator. ESPN dropped them from 55% to 53%. So, despite the worst loss in Tomlin's career, we're still on the track for the playoffs.
Absolutely. And a few things about that. One, I don't read a lot of New York Times sports coverage, but man, their election needle was very good. So I would imagine to trust it for this as well. 2, this shows why Tomlin's philosophy is so successful of just win the next week. Because you can find your place in a situation like this. I mean, the main reason this went up, as I understand it, is because the Chargers lost. The team that did everything right with quarterback and got the coach with the big resume who was going to be the young innovator and all that. He's going to be the next coach to be fired. He may not make it through the season in Los Angeles. And they have this Herbert guy who's supposed to be a big, big star. So the idea is if you can just keep winning the next week, then these numbers keep going up regardless of what's happening around you.
Right? Do you want to be a Chargers fan and with this explosive quarterback and running back and Pro Bowl wideouts and have a losing record?
and so many stars in the defense you can name. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, that safety who, if I remembered his name, he's a stud too.
Or you could be 6-4 Pittsburgh
Right. Right.
rooting for Dan Moore Jr. and Miles Killebrew
And Trenton Thompson.
and who else is and
Michael Walker. Am I saying that right?
I don't know. Someone who jumped Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson.
It was Walker. Robinson played as many defensive snaps as we did Sunday. It was Walker. I think it's Michael's how you say his first name.
Yeah. So he's turning into the next Buddy Johnson, right? Or is he? I don't know. I think that's about it for us today. Should I give the final? Maybe I'll give the final word to. Nope, there it is. At the notorious ADJ, the notorious Adge. This got a follow for me this week. Dear fans, you are the most disloyal, spoiled, whiny, hate-filled, and unsupportive fan base. I'm embarrassed by how you treat our players, our team, and our legacy. You drove players out of town, you deflate our current players, and you won't stop until you destroy it all. Follow for me.
I mean, I gotta say, if we ever get like a celebrity on this, like if we ever meet Michael Shannon or something, we have to record him reading this tweet so that we can play it on this show. Like, or if we ever run into like the movie trailer guy, like someone with a voice even better than my own. I would love to have a celebrity read this so that we could play it on this show.
Celebrity tweets. All right, we'll have to work on that. We'll get that going down. One more thing.
In the
We're not
off-season.
urinating on the fire, man.
Yeah. We're not peeing on the fire yet. We're not
That's right.
matriculating on this fire because it's almost raising hell season. So
It comes sooner and sooner every year.
and that's when I'll be urinating gasoline. So we'll definitely not be putting out the fire in December.
No, it'll be explosive.
4 more wins? Do we need 5? 4 more wins?
I mean, I'd feel better with 5, but I think 4 more wins does it.
Starting with Cincinnati. All right, if you want to keep the conversation going, I'm on TikTok. I'm at Kyle Kreis. Greg, where are you at?
Well, you can find me online at Greg Benevent, B as in boy, E-N-E, V as in Victor, E-N-T. And this coming Friday, if you have nothing to do, at 11:45 a.m. Pacific, 2:45 Eastern Time, I will be possibly visible in a promo I was a part of for the Amazon Black Friday football game. I am an elf, horrified that adorable children are abusing Santa.
Oh, it's breaking news. Watch the Friday pregame. What is it? Pregame Amazon
I think
coverage?
it's going to be on the pregame Amazon coverage. I think that was the time they told me it's most likely to air. I'm not doing a monologue. It's blink and you'll miss it, but it might bring you a smile.
One more reason to watch the Black Friday game.
I think it's Dolphins and Jets, so there might not be. That's if there's really nothing to do on Black Friday.
Well, if you listen to this podcast, you've got nothing to do.
That's what we've been talking about.
And that is what we've been talking about. All right, until next week, keep listening to your coach.
Be their best selves. That's going to be required.
Stay in school.